right. It is my great pleasure to introduce our second keynote of the day, Fighting Hate with Humanity. This keynote is a conversation between Lonnie Ali, lifetime director, founder, and vice chair of the board of the Muhammad Ali Center, and Daniel Lubetzky, social entrepreneur and founder of Both Builders and Kind Bar, which I know I rely on religiously when I'm traveling. So please enjoy Fighting Hate with Humanity, a conversation between Lonnie Ali and Daniel Lubetzky.
Thank you, Brett.
Hello, testing. Okay. I want to say, first of all, that I just saw Lonnie a minute ago and I surprised her. I've never felt worthy to wear this jacket. She gifted it to me when I visited the Muhammad Ali Center, and it's just too cool. And I'm like, if I don't wear it today in front of this amazing group of people that are trying to eradicate hate, I will never wear it. First time I wear it, thank you, Lonnie. And
you're so welcome, Dave.
Yes, and please continue the applause because.
But just so you know,
in honor of Muhammad Ali's fight, the Thrilla in Manila.
Thank you, Daniel. But Daniel doesn't need a jacket to prove that he's cool. You will find out that he is cool anyway. So.
I'm very grateful to be here. It's important. Lonnie and I really don't think too much about identities. We're very proud of who we are, but we're also very proud of being human beings. But still, it's kind of cool to be with a Muslim American leader who was initially raised Catholic, raised by nuns, a confused Mexican Jew who doesn't know what's going on, and above all, two people that are very, very firmly committed with one of the last several years have been very difficult for, I think, a lot of us. For me, it's been a very difficult journey. Personally, everything's going great, but for the world that I see, and yet one of my most beautiful rays of sunshine is this young woman. I love working with Lonnie and the type of work we've done before and we're going to do again to try to eradicate hate.
With the grace of God, inshallah, we will try to make impact a little bit at a time, but hopefully grow that impact across this nation. And it starts with each one of us and each one of you and how you show up every day in the world, how you show up with each other, with your community, and how you engage. And it's been a wonderful opportunity to be able to partner with Daniel and his organization Builders to combat polarization and division in this country, which has taken over and caused neighbors not to be neighbors anymore, to have create family divisions, and to even create how people relate to each other in relationships and who they date. It's gotten very granular, but somehow we have got to come together and turn this around, and it's going to take each and every one of us. And that's some of the things we want to discuss up here today, how to do that and where we are in America. Although I think a lot of us have a good idea of where we are in America.
I think we're going to try in the short time that we have to get concrete and talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing. But I'd like to start connecting to why we're doing it, and it has to do a lot with someone you love and someone I love. And Lonnie and I always talk about how much we miss Muhammad and my father. And my dad was a Holocaust survivor. He went through the Dachau concentration camp. He was liberated by American soldiers when he was 15 and a half. He was about 6 foot tall and weighed like 70 pounds. So he was almost not alive. And in spite of all of the hatred that he experienced, he lived his life with kindness. In fact, he passed away the year that we launched the company, and that's why we named it Kind in his honor, because in spite of all of what he went through, he always was just trying to see light and bring light to others. And I think Muhammad, you said he never knew a stranger. I first learned that sentence when you said that to me.
That's true. I've known Muhammad, even though he's gone now. I met him when I was 6 and a half and he was 22, and he lived his parents lived in the neighborhood we moved into, so I met him at a very young age. And reflecting back, I can tell you that the man was a gift even then. He had that heart, that golden heart of compassion and kindness and empathy, even then, at a very young age. And I'm sure that's the way God made him. And he never met a stranger. He was always wanting to connect and learn more about people and hear their stories and how he could help them and how he could uplift them. And it was, even though Muhammad came off sometimes as being confident, self-assured, boastful, he was very much the opposite in private. He was all about uplifting others and helping them out and connecting with them on that human level. He really believed in connecting with people face to face, one-on-one, and making that human connectivity. And that's why he had such compassion and empathy for people. It was because of that, the way he connected with them. And it allowed him to cross divides. It allowed him to make friends everywhere, not just in Louisville or Kentucky or the United States, but across the globe, across political aisles, religious aisles. So I don't like to think of him as a unicorn, but there were people in the bush in New Guinea who knew who Muhammad Ali was. And that's not because they ever met him, but it was because of the way he treated people, the way he showed up every day in the world, and the way he coached not just me, but his children, how to show up in the world. And we do miss him. And it's, Daniel, I don't know if you witnessed his memorial service in Louisville, but it was amazing. It's exactly the way he lived. He told me that people would come from all over the world, which happened, to make sure I had a place big enough to hold them. And it's true, about 10,000 people came to Louisville, descended upon the city of Louisville from all over the world, people who had never met him. It was a utopia almost. People were opening their arms, being wonderful and kind and welcoming people, strangers they didn't even know.
I have two quick follow-up questions from what you said. I remember when you guys gave me the tour, and I consider myself pretty educated, but I was stunned to learn that after Muhammad Ali won his gold medal representing the United States, he came back, sat down in a counter in Louisville, and they refused to serve him. After he was wearing his gold medal, and they told him, "We cannot serve you here." In some ways, we've made a lot of progress since then, but you see what's been happening the last several years and what happened this week, and the way that political violence is being normalized. You have a tiny bit more perspective than me, because for me, the way my narrative was is my father went through the Holocaust, and then when I was born, I was born in 1968, first in Mexico, then in the United States, but I inherited advancing freedom of expression, rule of law, democracy, respect, all of these values, kindness. We were exporting them from the United States across the world, and I would never imagine that in my lifetime, all of a sudden it's regressing in the last 10 to 20 years, depending how you're measuring. It's really, really, all these things that we took for granted under threat. When you look with a tiny bit more perspective, are we better off? How do you compare today's moment to those days?
Well, that's one of the things I was going to point out to. When Muhammad passed away in 2016, we were at a different point in our evolution of how we treat people. Since that time, almost once it concluded, we have just seemed like we took a sled and went downhill.
Can you hear us well, or
I know, I feel like
just
it.
keep
Can
it
you
closer?
hear me? Okay. It feels like everything has deteriorated. It's not the world that even you and I grew up in, right? I mean, there were differences, but even what happened last week with Charlie Kirk, I was horrified. Probably nothing that man said that came out of his mouth I may have agreed with, but he had a right to say it, And he was a human being. And it's one of the things I think we have lost is that connection to our own humanity. It's what identity politics, it's what polarization, it's what we have sort of evolved into, is losing that connection and not looking at people as human beings. That's why we're seeing all the political violence that we're seeing. We don't relate to people as people. They're objects, and they're objects to be dealt with and eliminated. We have to stop thinking like that, but we have to nurture. Compassion is not just a feeling. It's a muscle that can be flexed every day with small acts, every day, small acts of kindness. Empathy is what you feel when you see somebody and you immediately feel some kind of connection because they're not feeling well or they're down and out or whatever. Compassion is the action that you take once you realize that empathy that you have for that individual. But we have to nurture that. It's something, and I told you one time, Daniel, it's like a seed that you plant in the ground and you pour water on and you fertilize and you grow it until it becomes a big tree. And soon enough, believe it or not, it becomes part of your life. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes automatic, reflexive. And that's where we're trying to get to, back to that. If we could just move the needle back to where we were, I mean, that would be an accomplishment, really, from where we are now. If we could just move it back to where we had civility and kindness to people, and even though we had differences, we had respect for one another.
In a couple minutes, I'd like to describe specifically some of the initiatives you and I are doing with builders and the Muhammad Ali Center and the work that we do. But just because you're on that theme, I just want to say, my theory of change for our community of people that want to eradicate hate is we actually represent the overwhelming number of people that recognize that we're moving in the wrong direction. It's not 50%, it's north of 80, 90%, probably north of 90%. People that wake up and they want to divide, destroy, diminish, destroyers, I don't know if they're less than 1% or 1 to 5%, but they're not more than 10%. People that want to do good, that want a better future for the world, that want to live this world better, they're the overwhelming majority. But we are not rising up to the task of every day giving shape to the world the way we want it to be. And I think Muhammad Ali's inspiration, my dad's inspiration, many people in our lives' inspirations, live the world better than they found it because of not just the big things that they do, like, okay, Muhammad Ali is 1 in a billion, but in the way he treated people every single day. Every one of us, it just starts with that, in our behaviors and in our habits. And what do they mean? When you're consuming social media, looking at content that might seem a little bit more boring but more reflective, not forwarding the most extreme stuff that is the most scandalous, and commenting and reacting and becoming that. Having grace and temperance, particularly during those moments when you see something ugly happening, having the ability to be self-reflective, voting for people that are going to be builders, demanding in your citizen, in the legislation and in the action from newspapers, from media, from reporters, from politicians, from everybody, that they work to unite us rather than divide us, to bring us together rather than tear us apart, because we are going to create the incentive structure for politicians to follow the will of the people. Pennsylvania is one of the very few states where there is a lot of blue and a lot of red, and it ends up getting people in government that are forced to be more thoughtful. In states and cities that lean very strongly red, very strongly blue, the incentive structures end up being to just throw red meat to your extremes on the far left, far right. And unfortunately, gerrymandering is so out of control that 93% of districts are no longer competitive in a general election. So it ends up only mattering that you get the primary nomination for your Democratic or Republican Party for that particular district, because then that's the party that's going to win. So it ends up creating a competition for the extremes. So every one of us, in how we choose to live our lives and who to vote for, what to read, what to forward, how to treat people when we're walking down the store in the grocery, to look at people with that compassion and with humanity, particularly to those that are hard to love, particularly when you see somebody that's a bit of a, because it's easy to love the people that are easy to love. It's, well, what a genius statement I just made. But you need to try to outpour that respect, that compassion, that civility, particularly when it's difficult.
You know what, Daniel, there's a lot of things you said there. And one thing that we cannot be, today in today's world, you can't be like me enough. I mean, that's the way it is. You have to be so much like me for me to even have a conversation with you. And that's not where we should be. And Muhammad was one of those kind of people, and it's what we carry on, the legacy at the center. I won't say he despised politics, but he could have cared less about it. He really cared about the person themselves. And we have to move in that direction where we are, and one of the things that I learned at Builders is that we're so entrenched in our own thinking, we're not listening to the other side. We're not listening to what they're saying to us. We're not listening to see how we can build bridges where we can find common ground, because we're so stuck where we are in our own thinking and thinking that, you know, our way is the right way. We don't allow room for others, and we don't allow ourselves to make the connection, to cross that bridge, to find that common ground. And that's one thing, even I mean, after all of the tutoring that I've had through Muhammad, you know, books I've read and all of that, even I have to be on guard about that, not putting people in as far as their labels are concerned, putting them in a box somewhere because they're different from me. In fact, one of the things that I feel when you talk about eradicating hate and finding common ground and reducing this toxic polarization is deliberately go out and find somebody who is different than you and engage in a conversation. If you never listen to the other side, you never know what they're thinking. You don't know their rationale. You don't know how they arrived to where they are. And I challenge you to do that. Find someone who is different than you to talk to. Don't always just talk to people who think like you, agree with you, look like you, vote like you, practice their faith like you. Go out and find someone else who's totally different than you and engage in conversation.
What I love about what you just said, Lonnie, is that you started by acknowledging that you too are suffering from this danger that all of us are. I find it very interesting that I tend to talk about the problem that we're facing, where there's a huge problem, the dehumanization, and all of us realize that it exists, but almost none of us realize that it's happening to us. All of us know that it's happening on the other side, but we don't accept that it's happening to us and to our, whatever our side might be. And it is because all human beings are conditioned and wired to affirm their beliefs. Like, we like affirmation bias. We get data, and if the data supports our perspective, we feel smart. It's like, yeah. So we tend to, by nature, have that problem already. It's difficult to accept data that counters our deeply held beliefs. It's become so much more dangerous with social media, where I assume in this group people understand this problem far better than on average, but even happens to us, where we're being fed all this stuff. And for me, it's terrifying. Like, let's say in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict, I get a disproportionate amount of information about the way Israelis are suffering from Hamas's terrorism. And what terrifies me about that is that I know that my Palestinian friends are getting the exact opposite. And I get very few videos about the suffering of Palestinians. And I'm fortunate because of a big operation in the Middle East that I do get some of that from my Palestinian colleagues and staff, but my algorithms don't feed that to me. It has to be sent directly to my friends because I don't click enough of that. So what the algorithms are feeding me is all just stuff to affirm that my side is right, the other side is wrong. And the reason it terrifies me is because the other side is getting the precise opposite. And this is happening between Democrats and Republicans across all different things. You're being fed what you want to believe rather than what you need to hear from the other side. And it ends up you thinking that the other side is really not worthy, that they are immoral, unethical, inhuman, monsters,
Right.
extremists. And that's how the dehumanization happens. And so we all need to burst those bubbles and burst those algorithms and try to click on and read articles from sources that we're not used to reading.
Speaking on clicking on articles, we did a report at the Ali Center that we call the Muhammad Ali Index, and it was a snapshot in time of where compassion exists in the United States last year, over a 3-month period prior to the election. And what we found is some of what Daniel has already expressed here, is that there was a 4,000% increase in the online search for compassion. People wanted it. Even though 60% of people knew that over the last 4 years compassion had declined, but they were looking for it. They were hungry for it. They wanted that connection. And we realized that when we did this, and this wasn't just a feel-good kind of a study. This was a scientific study with real data that was driven by behavioral intelligence as well as AI intelligence to come up with these, identify these components of compassion and where we are. It allows us to identify what causes hate. It allows us to track compassion and to predict compassion. And true enough, people have moved away from, institutions and all that trying to provide, to lead the way, let's just say. They really trust more individuals. That's where you guys come in. They trust individuals in their community leaders, spiritual leaders, sports figures. That's who they trust to really, because there's nothing, they figure it's more genuine, more real, intentional when it comes from an individual than it does an institution. But with the compassion index, it's important that we understand what causes a community to become compassionate or to be identified as a compassionate city. And it uplifts all people. It's a little prescriptive in how we approached how you can become a compassionate city if you're not. But there is, and the first thing I should tell you is self-compassion. You have to practice self-compassion, because if you don't have compassion for you, you can't have compassion for anywhere else or anyone else, because the well is dry. So we have to practice self-compassion. But I would urge you to download that index. I'm not giving it justice, that report, at aliindex.org. And at the end, we have a pledge. It's a compassion pledge. It's really more of a reminder. I'd ask you to sign it to flex that compassion muscle every day. I feel Muhammad was the poster child for compassion. Every time, Daniel, as you know it, everything Muhammad did, it was all about someone else, really. It was really about making himself high enough so he could reach all people and connect with all people. And that's what he did. So that's one of the legacies that we carry forward. The more important part of his legacy that we carry forward at the Ali Center.
Most people don't know, but Muhammad Ali was on our board. Right. And I don't think Lonnie realized that when she gave me the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Prize 2 years ago, and was surprised to learn that they actually had been one of the earliest most catalyzing supporters when I was, kind didn't exist. It wasn't in the map. I was basically just a peace activist trying to build bridges between Israelis and Palestinians. And they believed in us and supported us. And so I know that he took the risk. And I also know what you said, that he was one of those forces that united people. But what I like the most about what you just said in terms of the compassion index is that I deeply agree that there's this reservoir of goodwill that we need to tap, because everybody's realizing things are getting out of control. Dehumanization is completely, terrifyingly dangerous. And there is something we can do about it. We just need to find a way to tap it and to channel and inspire people to understand their power to change the world around their communities and around the world, and to exercise that power and turn it into a responsibility. At Builders, we have an initiative to try to, and I'd encourage you all, Lonnie, I, and 350 other leaders from will.i.am to Mark Cuban, like a whole spectrum of people, business leaders, musicians, celebrities, humanitarians, are building this movement which has over 3.5 million signatories that are pledging to become builders than destroyers, to invest every day into uniting people, into building together rather than tearing society apart. And I hope that you will learn about it and buildersmovement.org.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.